Hey fellow Indian riders, thanks for tuning back in. In my previous video I showed you how to install the Indian Windshield Tune-Up Kit with removing the outer fairing. In this video I'm going to show you how easy it is to install it just by removing the front headlight. Since the production of my last video, forum members began requesting kits for their bikes. Due to the popularity and success of the first run of these kits, I have now teamed up with a local manufacturer to produce the shims that are included in the kits. These kits are available to the general public as well as dealers nationwide. Let's take a look at what is included in the kit. 2 precision cut spring steel shims, a small amount of high quality moly paste to lubricate the end of the screw mechanism, 2 stainless head screws with lock washers to replace the factory screws from the lift mechanism cover, 2 spring steel wavy washers to replace the commonly torn factory rubber washers, and by popular demand, 2 new wire ties to replace the ties that you'll be cutting when removing the wire separator plate. Because the screw mechanism is hollow on the end, the shims are made out of a high quality spring steel material for ultimate durability. Any other material, such as plastic or foam, will degrade over time and simply will not last. Please keep in mind that the contents of this kit are of the highest quality and careful consideration went into the engineering and selection of all parts used in the kit. Using a 4mm Allen wrench, let's get started by removing these 2 screws. With those 2 removed, carefully pry back and forth on the upper edges of the headlight cover until it actually releases from the grommets. With the headlight cover out of the way, let's remove the 3 10mm bolts that are holding the headlight in. I always like to make sure that you hold on to the headlight as you remove this last one. And then with the headlight removed, go ahead and disconnect the connector. Once those 2 are out of the way, we're going to go ahead and cut these 2 wire ties. With those 2 wire ties out of the way, we're going to go ahead and remove these 2 10mm bolts that allow this whole plate to come up. Okay, with those 2 bolts removed, we're going to go ahead and take this plate and just gently lift it up a little bit. This will allow us to get our long screwdriver in to remove the 2 screws from the cover. Using a screwdriver that has a long handle to it, I'm going to lift up the plate a little bit and feed the screwdriver in underneath that plate, and using your other finger, guide the tip of the screwdriver until you can find the head of the screw. Once you have that engaged, go ahead and put a fair amount of pressure on the end of the screwdriver and just kind of work it back and forth until you can feel that screw break loose. You're going to want to do it for both screws. Using the moly paste provided in the kit, spread a nice even layer over the shim that's going to contact the end of the screw mechanism. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is reach in with my left finger, pull up on the cover a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and slide the shims in from this side. So there's two different ways to guide the shims in. You can either start by putting one in and then follow up by the second, or in my case, I'm just going to go ahead and guide them in together. So just go ahead and slide them in, lifting the cover up, and at a certain point you can use the end of a pick and actually help walk them in there. Notice how the notch of the shim fits over this tab and in between these two outer bosses. Using a 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench, go ahead and install the new hardware. And just snug in place. Okay, go ahead and install the two 10 millimeter bolts that hold this plate on. And you're going to just want to go ahead and snug them up. Do not over tighten. After having installed the two 10 millimeter bolts that holds this plate in place, we're going to go ahead and inspect all the connectors inside the fairing to make sure that everything is still secure. After we have inspected all the connectors, we're going to install two new tie wraps that hold this harness in place. And then go ahead and cinch. So the last thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and install the headlight and then install the outer cover. Let's turn our attention to fixing the rattle at the pivot point of the windshield. We're going to go ahead and remove these 5 screws holding the windshield on. With the 5 screws removed, go ahead and carefully remove the windshield. The factory used a rubber washer at the pivot point to help cut down on the vibration of the windshield mechanism. Unfortunately, most of these rubber washers end up tearing. So we're going to go ahead and remove this Allen head screw and replace that rubber washer with that spring steel wavy washer that's included in the kit. First off is to use a 5mm Allen wrench, but in order to actually make it work in this location, the end of it should actually have a ball. And that I don't have in my shop. The second thing you can do is use a 5mm Allen head socket with a universal joint and carefully guide it in there to be able to actually get it out. With the edge of the fairing protected with a piece of masking tape, let's go ahead and remove that Allen head screw. So here's the factory rubber washer that's commonly torn on these. So we're going to go ahead and throw that away, and we're going to replace it with the spring steel wavy washer that's actually included in the kit. Installation of the screw can be a little tricky with the fairing in place. What I like to do is take the pivot point and push down on your finger until you can see the threads align with the hole of the window frame. Then take your other hand and carefully guide that screw in place until you can actually get a couple of threads to catch. Once you have those threads caught, feed your Allen head socket into place and work the screw into its location. You have to be careful because the screw has a shoulder on it, and you want to make sure that shoulder finds its way into the window frame. Tighten and torque to spec. The final step is to install the windshield and torque all the fasteners to spec. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps, and remember, ride safe.